King Jesus, thank you so much for this group of people that have taken time out of their day to hear about mine and Kelly's thoughts and opinions and beliefs on relationships and singleness. And please help Kelly and I steward our voices and our words and our thoughts in a way that honors and loves you, your creation, and your people, and not just ourselves and our story. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so before we start, there is going to be about 10 to 15 minutes of content, and you guys feel free to ask any questions the whole time, but we will do a Q&A after. So, but what we're basically going to talk about is I'm going to talk about what Christians are called to. We're going to share mine and Kelly's story, and then we're going to give about 6 good questions for anybody that wants to pursue a relationship. So the first thing is that all Christians, if you call yourself a Christian, you're called to one of 2 things. One is intentional celibacy, or one is marriage between a man and a woman. And we can talk about that later. That's confusing, but intentional celibacy, you're being intentional about being single, or intentional marriage, where you're intentional in your marital relationship. Those are the only options as a Christian, right? And we see this throughout all of Christian history, right? We see monks taking a vow of celibacy, or priests taking a vow of celibacy. We even see that today. There's movements all across the United States of people living in houses where people are solely single, and they create an amazing brotherhood or an amazing sisterhood, right? The church has honored single people for a really, really long time. Maybe not so much so in America, and that's really bad, but the church has always loved single people. Jesus was single, Paul was single, and a lot of the apostles after them were single, right? So singleness is a huge, huge deal in God's eyes, and it's a beautiful thing to dedicate your life to that. Marriage is another thing between a man and a woman. God's divine differences, God is both male and female coming together in the marital act, which is sex, right? Or union together, right? Marriage, because it's the most intimate relationship, should be our most exclusive relationship. And in fact, when you look at the whole Bible, we see that a relationship with God, because it's the most intimate relationship, should be the most exclusive relationship, right? It shouldn't be with any other gods. So when you're in a marital relationship, it shouldn't be with any other people, because your most intimate relationship should be your most exclusive relationship. And that does come with certain ways of pursuing that intimate relationship. And no matter if you're single or if you are married or in a relationship, every Christian is called to be chaste or to have chastity. And what that means is chaste is that means you are stewarding the body, the mind, the thoughts, the beauty, your imagination that God gave you to love others and to love God. So if you use your singleness to have a single income, to only buy things for yourself, you're not being chaste. You're not loving people well. You're not loving God well. Or if you use your marriage or your relationship to have a dual income, right? Dual income with no kids, you can go on like great vacations, or you can donate twice as much as you normally would to your local church, nonprofit, or anywhere that's hurting in your neighborhood, right? Everybody's called to be chaste. And people throughout our generation, throughout the generations, have used their singleness or their marital relationship to be exclusive, right? Singleness is when we turn towards ourselves and not towards others, which God calls us to. And marriage is when we turn towards each other and not towards others. And that's also against God's will. So you have to be chaste in either scenario. That means being pure, and that means being loving to those around you and to God. So that's the basic things Christians are called to: singleness or marriage, to be chaste and to love others and love God. What do you think, Kelly? Anything on that? Cool. Kelly and I want to recognize that we're both married, to each other, crazy. And we want to recognize too that like, we're so sorry if we say anything wrong that doesn't speak into singleness, but for what we know, we are older than most of you. So we've lived what you're living being single right now. So we do feel like we can speak into your age, right? If you were 30 years old, we might feel pretty hypocritical and pretty taken aback about it, but we're not. We've lived through college, not being married. So just like you guys are right now. So we feel good about that. Mm-hmm. But Kelly, do you want to share your story with dating? And that probably goes into your testimony, but like your story with dating and relationships and the good, the bad, the ugly. So yeah.
Yeah. So I was raised in a Christian household and kind of been a very much like purity culture, save yourself for marriage.
What is purity culture? Can you even go into that?
Just save yourself for marriage. But purity culture being a high priority on modesty, a high priority on saving yourself for marriage, a high priority on like courtship type relationships where like relationships aren't worth having if they're not going towards marriage. Very much in that like bubble of Christianity, and I held to that pretty well. I had my first boyfriend when I was in 10th grade. We didn't even hold hands, so I don't even know if it counts. Like, we did nothing. We were like friends that really liked hanging out with each other, and then all of our friends were like, oh my gosh, you guys like each other. And we were like, okay. And then and then after that relationship, I went through like a really rough season in my family. My parents got a divorce. We moved. My school closed down. I had to transfer from my junior year of high school. Just a lot of change that caused a lot of like doubt in me. And so that also brought into doubt like my thoughts on relationships. So I started dating a guy who wasn't a Christian, and he's a nice guy. And we, that was like my first kiss. I was 16 or 17. And yeah, that was like a fine relationship. That was my first like real relationship, I guess. I broke up with him because he liked me too much and it freaked me out. And so I broke up with him the day before spring break. Nice. So I was like overwhelmed by that because, again, first relationship, it was like a lot.
I was 16 or 17.
16, yeah, probably. And then I started that next summer, I started dating a guy that was a pastor's kid, was like on paper, like the perfect guy to date. And good friend, like family friends, like just the kind of guy that every little Christian girl wants to go out with. He immediately started cheating on me because I would not have sex with him, and he wanted that. So he found that elsewhere while maintaining a relationship with me into our like the fall of our senior year. Many people told me about it, and I didn't believe them because 16, I was pretty 16, turning 17, so pretty unaware. And then finally I broke up with him, pledged to be single. He was a really rough end. He ended up stalking me and had to get like some legal involvement. That's like an extended story on bonus time. And so for the rest of my senior year, that was like November. For the rest of my senior year, I was single, but not very intentionally single, kind of like letting boys take me out on dates, just having fun. And then I started my first long-term relationship the summer after I graduated high school, and that was with a non-Christian guy. I, at this point, was, I would say, like not a Christian. I was not following Jesus. I didn't care at all. And I dated that guy on and off for almost 3 years. He was in a fraternity here at the U. We dated long distance and then not long distance, really back and forth. A lot of our relationship revolved around partying and alcohol, and he did a lot of drugs. And so that just was a really up and down. There was no stability. There was no like betterment of each other. It was all about, it was very selfish. Like, we were both getting what we wanted out of our relationship, and if we weren't getting what we wanted, we were fighting about it. And so eventually we ended our relationship kind of like, wasn't a clean break. It was like a slowly like just getting tired of each other and eventually just stopped talking. And I, at that point, like had no friends because, like, again, very selfish relationship. Our whole lives just revolved around self-serving. And so I had no friends. It drained kind of everything from me. Self-confidence, self-worth, friendships, relationships with my parents. Like, I really had nothing after that. So that's actually when I met Jesus again, found Jesus kind of in the loneliness. And at that point, I pledged to be single till I was 30. I was 21 at this point, so clearly that did not happen. But that was the first season of intentional singleness I'd ever had in my life, where I was actually like content with Jesus, working on my relationship with him, working on other friendships, pouring into my life. Finding community, finding meaning in community beyond like attracting the attention of boys. And that was kind of went on for like about a year. And I met Chasen during that time. And Chasen and I, when we first met, it was about 6 months after I ended my relationship with my really bad relationship with that guy. And it was about 4 weeks after he ended his previous relationship. And so we decided to not date right away. We liked each other, we thought each other were cute, all that. But we decided not to date because I was in a rough spot and had pledged to myself that I was going to be single till I was 30, and I was seeing if I could hold out. And and he just needed to recover from his relationship, we'll talk about. So we went on dates for about 6 months. We would go on a date about once a month, twice a month towards like the latter part of that time.
We would just talk and get to know each other.
Yeah, we made really strict boundaries around like, if we're not dating, we're not kissing, if we're not, we're not going to cuddle and watch movies, we're not going to pretend like we're
hold hands or anything.
Yeah, we're not going to pretend like we're in a relationship if we're not in a relationship. Like
we're in public places and like talk.
Yeah, we're going to just get to know each other and be really intentional friends. And so and then Chasen went on a mission trip to Kenya for 7 weeks, and I didn't hear from him once. So he could have been dead.
I sent one email.
Sent one email the first week he was there, and then I didn't hear from him. So I was like, at one point, I was like convinced he'd been kidnapped and like was never gonna see him again. I was like, it's okay. Like, glad I didn't get too attached because I might not come back.
You didn't even see me at the airport. Didn't even visit me.
Like, thought you were dead. And then after like a week or so after we got back, we met and had a conversation about what a relationship would look like, what we wanted it to look like, where we were headed individually in our careers. At this point, we were both feeling called to ministry, and that we had a big conversation about that. And just talked about what an intentional like courtship relationship heading towards marriage would look like. And then we entered probably my first intentional relationship ever, where we actually talked about goals and values and what we wanted for ourselves, what we wanted to achieve as individuals, and also how we could help each other. And we went on like that for about a year. And then we got engaged the day after our 1 year like anniversary. And then we were engaged for 10 months. It was a long time to be engaged. It felt really long. I know it doesn't seem that long. It feels long when that's happening. And then we got married. And now we're experts at relationships. So that's how when you get the marriage certificate, they're like expert. So
yeah, and kind of on that, like one thing Kelly and I really don't like is when like couples use their story as like the example for how every relationship would look like. So if you took something from our story that was helpful, that's great. But like we no way want it to be like the normative story of like, oh, I want to be like Chasen and Kelly. It's like, that's great, but like we probably don't want you to be like us. So we want you to be like we want you to be like Jesus in the church. Right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons we went about it how we did
based on our stories
and where we were at like emotionally and with our mental health and with our emotional health. And so that's not going to be what everyone needs, but and there was a lot of moments in that were like not good. Like every time that we had a date, Chasen was like, hey, I still like you, but I'm not going to date you. And I was like, you don't need to say that, it's not helpful. A lot of my friends thought he was leading me on and like playing the field, and so there was like a lot of hard in that too, though it's worked out. So don't use, just because we ended up married, doesn't mean like how we did it is like perfect and like the way to date. But we learned a lot from doing that. So
and then going into my story, I always tell people like Kelly and I really did have a good relationship. We didn't like break boundaries or anything, which we'll talk about more, but and I always follow up with, it was like 45th time was the charm for me. So I'd kissed like 44 girls before Kelly. I'd been in like 25 plus relationships. I'd slept with multiple girls. So it's really bad. But so I didn't grow up in a religious home. And so I had my first girlfriend when I was 12. And we like made out and everything.
This is a fun side fact. That girl then went on a date with his best friend in college. So that's
super
weird. Small. That's how small Utah is.
Yeah, so I like had my first girlfriend at 12, like made out and stuff. I got to second base when I was like 14. If you're unaware of what that is, it's like boobs or whatever. It's so cool to a 14-year-old. It's like crazy. Like, I told all my friends about it. She was an LDS bishop's daughter, so it felt like so cool to me as a 14-year-old who like wasn't religious. It was like, oh, it was so cool. But then in between like her and my next girlfriend, there was like a lot of playing and manipulating girls emotionally and physically. And then at 15, I had a girlfriend for 9 months, and that's who I lost my virginity to. And yeah, we slept together a lot. It was, I don't know, she was like 4'9", and I was 6'2". So
You don't need to
I don't need to go into that, obviously. Yeah, but then like spring break came around, and I like in my like
why is it spring break?
In my like teenager non-Jesus centered mind, like I totally wasn't a Christian at all, wasn't going to church. I just thought like, man, I really don't want to marry this girl. Like, this is dumb. So then I broke up with her. And yeah, that was like all the thought I put into it. And the very first thing she said to me was, I slept with you. And that's the last thing she said to me. So that really hurt me. That really messed me up. So I went to church, I went to a church and it was really good. But then I continued to play girls throughout high school. I probably played like a lot more girls. I don't know how many, but I was super infatuated. Like I really wanted to be in a relationship. I thought that was like the end all be all. And I remember so many times where like this girl came up to me. She's like, hey, how come you stopped talking to me? And I said, well, because you were a bad kisser. And that was it. That's all I said. So yeah, just like so many guys, there's this time in high school. I'll just tell this. This is a really bad story, but there's time in high school where I went on a date with one girl on Tuesday. And it was a great date. It was awesome. Then I went on a date with one girl on Wednesday, and the girl on Tuesday, we went to see The Fault in Our Stars because like it was told Fault in Our Stars, after watching that movie, there would be physical interaction after. And that happened, and it was really bad. And then that Wednesday, I went on a date with a different girl, and then I tweeted about it. I said, man, that was like the best night ever. And my friend commented, the girl that I went on a date on Tuesday with, but I meant it, the girl on Wednesday. So I DM'd him and I said, hey, I was talking about this girl on Tuesday, this girl on Wednesday, not this girl on Tuesday. So he screenshotted the tweet and he tweeted it out and tagged both girls. And that for like the last 2 years of high school cemented to everybody that I was a player, that I had a major problem with playing girls. So yeah, then my senior year, I had another committed girlfriend, and that ended really poorly. But my senior year, I became a Christian. And you know what? All those bad habits, all those transitioned right into my Christian life. So going into college, I was like, I'm not going to date a girl, but I made out with a girl, and it was really bad. So I'm like, I'm going to be single for the rest of my freshman year. And that did not work out. I like made out with this girl. I got mono during finals week. It was like the worst. It was like, oh my gosh. So but then I was single for 3 more months, like as much as like my super infatuated brain can handle. It was really bad. And then I dated a pastor's kid, actually, from May to December. And like I didn't know anything about Christian like sexual ethics or beliefs. So like we like had sex and stuff, and she totally said it was okay. And I'm like, okay, this is great. And it's awesome. But I felt really bad. And I felt my relationship with God was just like totally diminishing. So I broke up with her on Christmas. It's a long story, but she basically said, like, do you ever feel like somebody's dragging you down? And I was like, yeah, I do. And she's like, who? I'm like, you. I broke up with her on Christmas Day after some physical interactions had happened, which was really bad. So then a couple weeks later, I met Kelly, and he said, hey, I think you're really awesome. You're really beautiful. I heard a lot of good things about you, but like, I'm in a horrible, horrible place to date you right now. And I feel like I would just totally not be good, but I'd love to go out on a date with you. So then we went out on 10 dates, went to Kenya, and I had a great time from what I remember. I don't know about you. I knew I was alive.
I didn't spend that much time thinking about if you were alive.
Okay. And then, a week later, we had a discussion saying like, hey, before we date, I want to go into ministry for my whole life. And I was like, oh, I want to do that too. And we decided to intentionally date or court or
Jason used the word court a lot, and then he was made fun of a lot for using that word.
So now you said going steady or whatever.
Which also he was made fun of for saying that.
I think it's a good differentiation, yeah.
No, it like makes sense. Like like when we were dating, like we went on dates, but then once we started officially
but then
dating,
we dated or courted for a year, and then when our anniversary came around, this was super funny. She's like, hey, I really would love to come up and celebrate our 1-year anniversary. And I was like, nah, dude, I have work. She's like, well, what about after work? I'm like, nah, I have to study for the Greek test. She's like, Chasen, this is our 1-year anniversary. I really want to be there. And I'm like, so this is what I said. Are you ready? Killer line. I know, dude. That sucks. Done. The end of conversation. She was so mad. So Thursday, the day after our 1-year anniversary, I proposed to her. So that's the reason. Yeah.
That's why I blew me off.
That's why I blew her off. Yeah, I totally ghosted her that day.
Yeah, and then the first thing he said after I said yes to marrying him is, I pranked you so hard.
I said, best prank ever. So, and then we were engaged for 10 months, right? And you said that was hard from what you remember. It seemed good for me. I don't think I had to plan anything for the wedding, so. But yeah, that was good. And we've been married for almost 2 years. So crazy. So yeah, super huge man whore in junior high and high school and a little bit of college. So actually, funny story, not important. I was falsely diagnosed with an STD in college. So that was scary. I thought I had an STD for a week. So, and I didn't. I just peed blood, which is also bad. But yeah. So anyway, those are our stories. So just know that whenever we're doing this Q&A, we totally want to say that we've messed up, we've fallen short. We never want to guilt or trap anybody into, where they've messed up, because we've messed up. So saying that, we have one last section. We are going to go through just good questions you should have on your mind. We don't have standards. We're going to talk about boundaries a little bit, but these are just good questions you should ask before you engage in a romantic relationship with anybody. We think these are really good questions. So the first question we have, you can write these down on Zoom or on IG Live, whatever, but because I know you can't see them, but first question is when did you or that person accept that being Jesus is enough?
Being with Jesus.
Sorry. When did you accept, what did I say?
Being Jesus.
Oh, my bad. That's super radical. But yeah, when did you accept that being with Jesus is enough? And do you think you need that person or a person to make you happy, to make you complete, to make you fulfilled, right? Kelly and I found each other only when we were super happy with Jesus, and we think that's how other people should choose to find each other, is that they should be content with themselves and content with Jesus before they try to find another person to make them content. So when did you accept that being with Jesus is enough? Was it last week? Maybe that's not enough time. Was it 3 years ago? Maybe that's too much time. We don't know, right? These are arbitrary standards and rules. You know that, but when, and was that long enough or short enough? So yeah. Then the second question is, who is this person that you're interested in? What about this person is good? Do they fulfill your standards? Really think about this, right? If this person is oh man, they make me so happy. You know what also can make you happy is a golden retriever, And it's well, this person brings me food when I'm sad. So does DoorDash, right? You know what I mean? There's all these things that it's only this person who does this. It's that's just not true, right? You're just compromising all these things. And maybe this question is good for you if you don't know what this person should have. Should they work hard? Should they have a future? Should they have goals, right? You want people who have goals and standards and values. I don't know. What do you think, Kelly? Anything on this?
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot. Someone is asking me about, I think a lot of girls. I don't know if there's another my growing up. I don't know if other people did this, but your dream list, your must-haves of a man, and I think those can get a little complicated because eventually, I think you need the most important things of a person, and I would say that person, if you're a Christian, that hopefully they love Jesus and you're following Jesus. It's really hard to be in a relationship where you're not pursuing that same thing, that you could do life with them, I think is really important. But I think there's a lot of other things that we say are deal breakers, oh, he has to be at least 6 foot. Like, no, he doesn't. Like, he doesn't have to be at least 6 feet tall. Like, that is not a deal. Like, that should not be on your, like, standards list.
But I think another thing is like, well, they have to be like Republican or Democrat for me to marry them, right? And I would warn people on that, right? Because I think they don't have to, I don't think they have to be a certain political party, but like pay attention to how that person talks about politics, right? Are they super consumed with everything and they think you're going to be like the devil if you're not Republican? Like, that's bad, right? But if somebody's Republican and you have Democrat leanings, like, just chillax, maybe ask them questions, right? But if they're crazy about their beliefs, like, yeah, maybe you need to step back, right? So
yeah, so those are just good things to think through, but I don't think like your standards need to be this like checklist, or else eventually like you're gonna run out. No one's gonna fit that, because no one's gonna like tick every box.
And I would say it's sometimes it's not so much the what, but the how, because it's like, well, they're Christian, and it's like, well, but like really bad. They kind of suck though, right? So,
Jason and I both dated Christians, and they sucked.
We both sucked. We both sucked. Yeah. So yeah. Next question is, this is directly at you, and you can ask the person you're interested in, is why do you want to date right now? Like, is right now super pertinent? You know, is this person just to make you feel happy, like a dog, which we kind of talked about? But like, think about this. Like, if you are a freshman in college, I'm not like hitting on any of the freshmen here. That sounds weird in a dating conversation. Hitting on. Jabbing out. I'm not, you know, but like, and they are 26 years old and establishing their career. You know, it's why right now. You know, could it be a couple of years from now? Is right now like the end of the world and you need to date them to make sure you're called? Like, are you putting them in your 5-year plan? Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? I don't know. Yeah. You know, why do you want to date this person right now? And why do you want to date this person? You know, what is this person like, but why do you want to date them?
Or why do you want to date at all? Like, why are you even seeking a relationship, you know?
Yeah, so. Then I think this question often gets neglected, and we don't want to, you know, treat this super hard, but we do want to encourage it seriously. Like, what does your current and their current mental health look like? We've interacted with couples who both have some kind of mental health struggle at that point in time that's really severe, and they're like, this person will solve it. And Kelly and I are like, that, if you do that, that will be a trash fire. Like, that will not be good, you know? So just evaluate like your mental health and evaluate their mental health and talk about that. You know, for me, when I started to like Kelly, I was planning a debate. I was going to Kenya. I was finishing a lot of papers, and I'm like, man, I am so anxious and so filled with stress right now that a relationship I would just do it so poorly, you know?
And so. I was in a place of like loneliness. I was still like making friends and community. And so I knew if I entered a relationship, I think I would have put way too much hope in Chasen to like fulfill my, like, bring me out of my loneliness and bring me like community. And I needed to make my own space on my, like with my own friends before, like, so I didn't put all that on him. Yeah. So yeah.
That's good. Then this is a question you could probably ask each other as you are getting closer to this relationship, is how should you date? How do you want to pursue this dating? Do you want to go on a date night every week? Are you going to hang out 24/7? Are you going to be those kind of people? We're going to say, don't do that. That's super lame and super douchey. People think a douche is just a guy. I feel like there's so many douchey couples. Totally not important. How should you date? Will this relationship double your ministry or cut it in half? If you're not a Christian, a good question could be is like, will this relationship double your friendships or will you cut it in half? You ever know that person in high school? It's like when they started dating, it's like all their friends just got written off, right? So for Kelly and I, this goes into being chaste, where it's like, okay, when we started dating, I gained like 20 friends and she gained like 20 friends. And we're actually still really good friends, right? We didn't lose 10 friends on each side, you know? And when you're in a relationship, are you going to be an exclusive couple at the party who only sits on like this couch, cuddling and talking to each other? Or are you going to be like apart from each other and being able to like, be like, oh, here's these funny stories about my romantic other, you know? So yeah, will this ministry, will this relationship double your ministry or cut in half? And then anything on that? Okay, then finally, make sure you discuss talk, touch, and time boundaries. And what we mean by that is talk boundaries would be like, when are you going to say I love you? Because people kind of throw that word around or they like hold on to it super seriously and they don't, like, they hate using that word. So for Kelly and I, I really value that word. I didn't say I love you till
3
3 months in, you know, but talk could also include like, are you going to say to your romantic other, like, man, your ass looks nice today? Seriously, should you say that in your relationship? Like 1 month in, would that be appropriate? You know, or it could even be like, are you going to talk about marriage 2 weeks into your relationship? I don't know, right? Like we didn't do that. That would have put so much pressure on us, and that would have freaked me out because it's like, what do you mean marriage? What are you talking about? You know, but some people, it's like 1 week, it's like, oh man, like think of what we're gonna name our grandkids, and you're like, what the hell? Like, you don't even have kids yet. Like, do you have kids right now? You know, so touch boundaries. That's obviously, you know, physical boundaries, and you know, Kelly and I believe that it shouldn't go any further than kissing or making out. We can talk about that, but an example we have is, okay, be really raw. Is like Kelly and I only kissed, we only made out. And I would touch Kelly's butt sometimes, like when we were dating. Gosh, this is so weird to say. But there were like some months, like winter months, when like the only thing you can do in winter is watch movies, where I was just like, yo, November to February, no touching the butt. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? And like that might have been legalistic. It might have been weird. Some of you are probably like, I wouldn't even do that, right? But like for us, it's like, yeah, November to February, like no touch the butt. And I think when we were engaged, it was like, I don't know. Then like I think when we were engaged, it's like 2 months before our wedding, it's like we're not gonna make out.
Yeah.
Right? It's
boundary. I think people think that like your boundaries become easy, like your physical boundaries become easy when you're engaged. No.
Yeah.
Harder. So
we never set like hard, super concrete boundaries. We were always like, hey, maybe this month we'll just like give a pet kiss or give a hug, right? And then next month we can try making out. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Like we were pretty loose, and you know, we encourage people like, hey, don't BS yourselves. And then something I would say along with touch boundaries is how can you show affection without arousal? And if you're a dude, how can you show affection? Are you ready for this? Without erection. Like really, right? Like girl, like I'm not a girl, I'll own it. Like if your boobs like blew up twice the size when you were sexually aroused, like that would be a sign, right? Like guys, you know when you're aroused, right? Like something grows, you know. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, but like as a couple, it's like, how would you show affection without arousal, right? Because like this, do you like this show? Yes. You know what I mean? How do you show affection without arousal? Like really think about that. I think that's a good boundary. How do you show affection without arousal? And that's gonna be different for everyone. That'll be different for everybody. So, and then a final boundary that I feel like gets slept on relationship after relationship is a time boundary. Are you gonna spend 24/7 with this person? Are you gonna see them once a week? Are you gonna see them 3 times a week? Are you going to do homework with them every night? When are you going to hang out with your friends? You know,
how late are you going to hang
how late are you going to hang out at night? Like,
are you going to find yourself? I mean, so while Chase and I were dating, our best friends were also dating each other, which was really fun, but also like shows just the difference of people. So like Chase and I decided it was really hard for us to love each other well after midnight because I am not a late night person. So I get tired and cranky and sleepy. And so but our best friends would stay up till like 3 a.m. And my best friend and I lived in like an hour away. So we would carpool up to Logan where he lived together. So Chase would literally go to bed and I would like
go to bed at 11
or 12. And I would like go chill on the couch. Sometimes I'd read or like just be on my phone or literally fall asleep on the couch and wait for our friends' time boundaries, which they set at like 2 a.m. And so I would just chill there for 2 hours and then we would go home. And so it was different for everyone, but like we each decided like what was good for us and it worked.
Yeah. So because I feel like when some people engage in a relationship, it's like, I need to dedicate 18 hours out of my day to this person. It's like, this isn't a job. Like, you're not getting paid for this, right? Like, what are you doing? And honestly, it's not just detrimental to your spiritual life, it's detrimental to your physical life, right? Like if you're up till 3 a.m. texting, when are you going to sleep, right? Like, why do you have to give up 8 hours of sleep just to date a person? That's not good, you know? You guys have homework, you're in college. So that's what we mean by time boundaries. And then I think this is the final one is with who will you involve in your relationship? What friends will keep you from being blind to infatuation and remain intentional? Are you going to allow other people to call you out on your crap, to call you out on your BS? Or are you just going to believe that that romantic other is your sole source of authority, right? And I think this is the biggest pushback we get on, because for some reason we can be like super shitty at everything in our life, but when it comes to dating, it's like we all know how to kill it in a relationship. That's not true, right? We always need to involve more people. We need to involve other couples. We need to involve single people that can say, hey, you're being exclusive to single people in the room, right? We need to involve people older than us, people younger than us, because we're not experts. Kelly and I aren't experts on our marriage, so we have to ask people older than us. We ask wise people, we don't ask dumb people.
Yeah, but even for us too, like we asked like, you know, Christine, who is our housemate, but she's single and she's in the same like stage of life we are, but she has a totally different perspective. So we like ask her how we are and how it's been. And like last year we lived with more staff that were single. And so it's really important. When we were dating, we both had both single people and married people kind of checking in with us and saying, how's it going? Like, are you being intentional? Are you being nice to each other? Are you fighting all the time? Yeah. How are your boundaries? Like, do you need to change your boundaries? And it's just like, I think
or like, hey, how are you loving other people? Are you doing that well? Are you being exclusive?
Yeah. And I think sometimes we think that like relationships, because it is your most intimate relationship, that it also needs to be your most private. But I don't think that's true. I actually think like your marriage should be your most like seen, or your dating relationship should be your most seen relationship. Though it is like your closest one, because it's also the thing that like God can move through the most in your life is marriage. We think it's one of the greatest parts of our ministry, but if we don't share that with people, if we don't let people in to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, then how is anyone going to learn anything from it, and how is it going to be effective? So
yeah, I think there's two horrible echo chambers. Like echo chamber is a really big thing, right? Like far right echo chamber, far left echo chamber, right? It's like, I think the worst echo chambers could be an exclusive couple and then a selfish person, right? This person like always saying, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. And then this couple saying, you're right, you're right. Oh, we're wrong, but I'm right, right? And everybody thinks we're wrong, but that means we're right, because it's us against the world. And somehow you're in a movie with like Sacha Cohen Baron and it doesn't make any sense, you know? But okay. Those are our questions. Cool.
What a weird note to end on.
Okay, so along with that, we're going to try to keep a good pace. We're going to try to look at the Slido. And if people on Zoom, could you resend that Slido thing? And we're going to pull up those questions. But then we'll also take questions from the audience too. We'll try to go back and forth, but we'll start with Slido questions. So first Slido question, you want to take it, Kelly?
Yeah, so I just inputted all the ones that were asked on Instagram, which I will be transparent and tell you that all of them were asked by Rachel LaForge. But
oh no, wait. I just had questions, okay?
I just didn't want you to be sitting there being like, she's only asking my questions. So I just, but how do you know if it is worth dating someone?
You want to go first?
I think we kind of touched on this in this question, is like, I think if you ask yourself where you're at, where they're at, like where you're at with Jesus, mental health, season of life, is this going to be worth it? I don't think that there's like a set question or like understanding to have to know if it's worth dating someone, but I think that goes into like the standards you've set, the expectations you've set, the season of life you're in, to kind of weigh into if it's worth pursuing a relationship with someone.
Yeah, I would say any relationship worth pursuing involves risk. So you should count the cost.
Yeah.
That's all I would say.
Yeah, that's good. What is your take on deal breakers?
What's a deal breaker, Kelly? Could you define what is a deal breaker?
So a deal breaker, what I assume Rachel means, is like people will say, if they don't, I'll do a petty one, like if they don't ski or snowboard, like we can't date, like that's a deal breaker. A more serious one, so like my main deal breaker when going to a relationship was if this person does not want to go into ministry or fully support me going into full-time ministry, then like that's kind of a deal breaker. So that was a deal breaker for me personally.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think deal breakers are really interesting, because on one hand you said skiing and snowboarding, that could be a petty deal breaker, but we know that if I wasn't a hiker and you weren't a hiker,
It'd be hard.
It'd be hard, right?
Yeah.
It'd be hard. Like I remember this one girl, I was dating her kid, it sounds so, but she's like, I'm like, do you hike? She's like, I absolutely hike. You know how I could tell that she didn't hike? We went on a hike. And I'm like, oh, she doesn't know how to hike. This is bad. Like, why are you wearing that? And like, she was really into anime. Nothing's wrong with anime, but I hated anime. I'm not into anime. And I wouldn't say they were deal breakers, but it made me feel really stupid that we were dating sometimes. Like, it made me feel really silly.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes in Christian dating that like attraction or like shared interest can be put on the back burner because it's like, oh, as long as they're like love Jesus, then perfect, like you're good to go. But I do think that stuff matters because like this is the person you're going to be spending the majority of your life with. Like if you marry them, you're going to be spending the majority of your life with them. So hopefully you have some shared interests and some things in common. There's plenty of things that like I don't want to do with Jason. Like thank goodness you guys are in town because I don't want to go play frisbee golf, and he tricked me into doing it.
The boys.
Like he lured me to it by saying we'd get boba after 1 week. So there's definitely
played 9 holes. But okay, I can think of a more like just hypothetically. I've known people who are like, man, our date was going so well. It was amazing. We went skiing. Like we're both like the same level of skiing. But on the drive back, he told me he didn't believe in systemic racism. And I'm like, it was that bad? And I'm like, he believes in racism.
This is not a hypothetical.
It's actually happened. I'm like, he believes in racism, right? And she's like, well, yeah, but he doesn't believe that it's systemic. And I'm like, that's a deal breaker to you? And she's like, yeah, like he was really good at talking about all this other stuff, but because he didn't believe in that thing, I was like, dude, and I think there's a tension, right? Because on one hand, it's like, yeah, maybe people should believe in that, right? Like if somebody didn't believe that the Holocaust happened, that'd be like, what the heck? But people who believe in conspiracy theories can be cool, and you should hang with them. I don't know. And I think that example, though, it's like how the guy believed, how he believed that racism, systemic or not, should be solved. I thought that was fine. Like I know the guy, but like she focused on the what. And because he didn't check off the what, his how didn't matter, And I think there's a tension there. That's really hard. That's a hard tension, I feel like. So.
And you just won't, like, I don't think Chasen and I don't agree on every theological issue, every political conviction. Like,
I'll be honest, from the get-go of our marriage, I was like, let's become Anglican. And Kelly's like, hell no.
To this day,
it has caused major fights.
Yeah.
Which have been fine. Like they've totally been worked out, right? But like that wasn't a deal breaker. Like, oh, Kelly's not going to join a high church. I'm out. We didn't do that. So yeah. Okay.
So
let's do one more question from this slide.
Okay, why did you two decide to get married? What are some good reasons for Christians to decide to get married? Like, I mean, why we decided to get married when we did, or I guess if you don't want to clarify, yeah. We decided to get married when we did, largely out of like our timeline was based on a lot of like proximity things. So we were, like I said, we were like, I call it awkward distance. We weren't long distance, but we were an hour apart. So like every interaction had to be planned. And when we were dating, when we started dating, Chasen was going into his junior year. And I had no intention of moving to Logan in his last 2 years of college. Like, did not want to, didn't sound great. He had no intention of transferring. So we knew the earliest we would get married would be the May that he graduated college, which is when we got married. So that's the main, like,
so you're saying the win was a practical thing.
The when was a practical.
It was most practical to get married after I graduated.
Yes. Because we didn't go to the same school. So there was like one of us would have to move if we got married any sooner than we did. Like we literally got married 3 weeks after he graduated college from Logan. Yeah. So
and some people could get married in college if they stayed in college and that'd be fine, right? So totally, part of why we got married is the when was practical.
The when was practical.
But why? Yeah, why?
The why we got married, I mean, I don't know if our answer is different at all to this, but we both knew we weren't being called to celibacy. Like I felt pretty strongly that like I wanted to get married. That was a desire I had. That's something that like if it was in God's will, I wanted. And Chasen felt the same. So when we started talking about that, for us, the only place the relationship was heading was marriage. We weren't just going to date to have fun with another Christian person. So the why really came down to like when we decided that this was someone that like the big question we asked is like doubling our ministry, because we both wanted to go into ministry.
Could this
like,
double our ministry for life?
For life. And so is this someone I want to do life with? And we started thinking about what ministries could we work for? What could we do? And everywhere we looked, it was like, it's going to be better. We're great individually, but we're going to be better together. And we're going to do more together than we could do apart at this point as like we pursued our relationship. And so marriage made the most sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, my thought was I simply, I want to be a partner with this person.
yeah. So yeah, we
and
talk
not
about
just like, I don't feel like I was like, oh, I love you more than anything. That's just, like, wasn't true. Like, I'm sure I loved Jesus and philosophy way more than you at that point.
first, yeah,
but I was like, man, I can't partner with philosophy in college. No, but you know, like, I'm just like, I want to partner with Kelly. Like, I think it's a good partnership.
Yeah.
Like we had a year to evaluate. Like, man, Kelly has these shortcomings, but she's amazing in these areas, and I'm sure Kelly thought the same. Like, Jason's a little strict on these areas, but he's great in these areas, and like we
weird sometimes.
Yeah, we would be a good team.
There's
And
an affinity for throwing things off roofs, but
okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to ask something from the audience or from the Zoom?
Or you can keep putting them.
Or you can keep putting them in the Slido. I'm gonna pick one out though.
I do have another question, but you probably don't want to hear it.
Why would we want to hear it?
Because I don't know. I think you answered a lot of my questions.
You can ask a question, Rachel, if no one else has one.
Okay. How do you know if you're being called to celibacy or being called to a marriage?
Probably looks different for a lot of people. I think it'd be helpful to ask someone who does feel called to celibacy, because I don't know what that's like. But having heard some stories from people, for some people, it's just, relationships never come together. There's never a person that like they meet that is worth the partnership, they'd say. So they find their life elsewhere. For some, it is like a theological conviction, where some people do interpret scripture as like life devoted to Christ is alone. Like Paul talks about, it's better to be single if you can. So some people just like choose that. I would say it'd be hard to know at our age, like this time, if that's what we're being called to. And that's why I would invite anyone who's single to be intentionally single for as long as you're single. Because there's nothing wrong with celibacy if that is where like God does lead, but I don't think you can, there might be people, I don't know, there might be people that are just like, I have no desire to be married, like just zero. And that would be one way. But I think for others, it's like, I don't know what God has for me. And so I'm going to be open and prayerful about that before I make any life-changing decision to stay single or to enter a relationship. So,
yeah.
I mean, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think some of it is it's like it's knowing yourself. Like, and I think, to be honest, a lot of us don't know ourselves. You know, a lot of us don't know our needs or our wants or our desires or our passions more than a surface level and more than raw emotionality. Just a lot of us don't know that. I mean, a lot of you like want to be in a relationship and you're not even dead set on your major yet. You know what I mean? And you're paying money for that one, like a lot, or somebody is, you know? So I think some of it is knowing yourself, and also some of it is counting the cost, you know, and figuring out what cost you think is to count, you know? So for me, the cost of marriage was I don't get to be independent. Like, I don't just get to do whatever I want. I can't just hang out until 5 a.m. I can't just, you know, I can't just sleep. I slept on the couch once purposefully. I did it to be fun. And I got in a lot of trouble for it. I can't sleep on the couch, you know, you know, it's counting the cost either way, you know, and when you're single, the cost might be loneliness. The cost might, giving up your idea that the wedding is the pinnacle of your life, and that's not true either. So, yeah. This is a good question. What are some ways to avoid exclusiveness in a relationship? Should you invite people to everything you do as a couple? Where is a healthy boundary?
Ooh, okay.
How do you be super inclusive, but how do you, also have intimacy?
So this was a hard one for us in college because we were awkward distance. So being an hour apart, we saw each other once a week, if that. So it was hard to know how to intentionally spend time alone or together. So for us, that would often look like spending time with people and then taking like an hour or two out of our day that we were together to be alone. So that's either like going on a date or making dinner together or going on a long walk or a hike. Now, since we're together, we live in the same place. It's a lot more like a day-to-day thing. So I think some good things is to have established alone time. So we have a date night that we do every single week. And so that we know, like we do that by ourselves. Like we don't invite people to our date night. That's just our time. But that is probably, I would say, really the only time for us now as a married couple that like we set aside exclusive alone time. There'll be other times that we're alone during a week because it just works out that way. But
maybe that's a good question though, Kelly, is maybe it's actually setting up alone time, actually being intentional with your alone time.
Yeah.
So for Kelly and I, like when we were dating, we went on, we didn't ever go on a date night, but I always talked to Kelly on the phone for 30 minutes during the day and then for 30 minutes at night. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And then we had like one night to ourselves once a week when you came up to Logan, right? And that's all we did. And now as a married couple, we go on one hour walk a day, mm-hmm. and we have one date night a week. And like, we're super strict about it, So maybe that's good, is to plan your exclusivity, like be intentional about your exclusivity, right? Because sometimes I feel like we can fall asleep at the wheel and it's like, well, we're just going to spend 8 hours studying together, on a Tuesday, but then that Tuesday turns into a Wednesday, which turns into a Thursday. And it's like, and then it's kind of lame, right? But then maybe if you don't plan your exclusivity and you've been unintentional all week, well, then it comes to a Friday night gathering or large group and you're like, I haven't seen this person all week, so I'm going to spend all the time with them instead of with these other people. And it's like, well, that's because you weren't intentional with your exclusivity or earlier in the week. So maybe it's actually being intentional about when you want alone time.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll help create the boundary.
Yeah. I think especially like for a lot of people that have relationships like where they could see their significant other every day.
That's a privilege.
That it can be easy to just be like unintentional about that, but it then also can become unmeaningful. Like you're not really being present or loving, you're just kind of going through the motions. So you never feel like you're having quality time. So then you have a hard time bringing other people into it because you're like, we haven't had any quality time, we need alone time. But you just keep having this like unintentional alone time and you're never fulfilled by it. So if you create intentional alone time, you'll have a lot more capacity to be like not exclusive. And then with the not being unexclusive, like how to do that is to like literally like choose when to be apart. So for Chasen and I, one of the earliest things we did was at chapter camp. When we would go together, we would intentionally like not sit right by each other. We would like sit at the same table, but like on different sides. So we'd be like in the same group of people with our friends, but not just like only talking to each other. And now that's kind of like grown even to like on a Friday night, you will not see Chasen and I like hanging out together.
Usually ever.
Yeah. I mean, we might be like, hey, I'm going to Chick-fil-A. Like, do you want a sandwich? But really like we don't hang out with each other because we have different interests and we do different things. So I think planning when to be exclusive and planning when to be inclusive and like taking both of those things really seriously because you need both in your life. So, and in your relationship.
That's good.
Yeah. How should someone who views life pretty much in black and white understand the gray area between friendship, interest, and then actually dating? Also in regards to setting boundaries, knowing that they can change.
Oh, they do like chillax or something. I
Okay, that's helpful. I think for people who think in black and white, to help them through the gray is like over communicating. And this was something that was frustrating in our like early going on dates, but was really helpful. Was Chasen, every time that we went on a date, he communicated where we were at. He almost made it black and white, though we were in a gray period. He said, hey, I still like you. I still want to keep getting to know you. I still want to continue to pursue this, but I can't, like, it can't be official, right? Like, we can't be exclusive yet. We can't, we can't do this yet. And so that kind of removed the gray from the situation where it didn't need to be gray because I knew where we were at. And same went for boundaries, is we would say like, this is what I'm struggling with. This is where like the line is. And we made it black and white, but we knew that that was always going to change. Like our boundaries probably changed every month because like,
it was just always on the table.
It was always on the table. And so, so I don't think I'm more black and white, I think, than Chasen is, but neither one of us is terribly black and white. But do you have anything to add?
I think, yeah, maybe make it more black and white. Is that what you're saying? Maybe that's
over communicate to like take away some of the gray. I genuinely think like you cannot communicate too much about like, I don't like that whole like, oh, we're talking and it's mysterious and it's like cool and we don't need to be into, like, I think that's dumb. Like just say where you're at. Like if you're not ready to date someone and you just want to get to know them, tell them that. If you really want to date them, and tell them that. Like this whole like, we're just feeling it out. Like there's so much mystery around it. Like you're just gonna get frustrated. And it's gonna be a lot of gray. And if you're a person who thinks in black and white or they are, it's just gonna get like really annoying. So I just think like over communicate where you're at, how you're feeling, where you want to be, where you're heading. And that shouldn't be scary because it's okay to be like, we're not ready to date, or we're not ready to intentionally date, or we're not ready to court. So yeah.
I think unsexy conversations are the best conversations. Like when we were talking about boundaries, Kelly's like, what do you find attractive about me? I'm like, your butt is amazing. Like, I don't know if I should touch it. And like, that was it. Like,
yeah.
It was weird though, right?
Yeah,
or like, I think then like 3 months, like every 3 months we'd be like, hey, where do we want to keep? Like we seriously like almost like contemplated breaking up. It was like, should we break up? Like, are we doing this relationship right? Are we in the right stage to actually go into marriage? And
yeah,
apparently we said yes each time because we're married now. But like seriously, we put so much stuff on the table, like all the time. Nothing was set in stone. Like in one way it was black and white, but it was always on the table. It was never like internally molded or written into stone. It's kind of weird. But yeah.
That was probably a frustrating answer for people thinking black and white. It was not black and white.
Okay, person on Zoom or in the room right now? Any questions? Yeah.
Your opinion on something.
Yeah.
What do you think for people who've had relationships before, what do you think the best way to like bring up the past relationships is into your new relationship to like talk about it?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Chasen had different approaches to this.
Oh, we do? We have different philosophies?
No, I don't think we have different.
Like maybe you dropped the ball in the past, or like maybe it's just because like we ran into my ex-girlfriends like a lot. Like I remember, oh man, there was this moment when we were with our bosses who were like mentoring us, and this girl comes up and she's like, Mac and Amy. I'm like, I look at her, I'm like, oh God. And Jaren sees me, she's like, Mac and Amy. She looks at me, she's like, Chasen. I'm like, Jaren. And then she walks away. And what was the first question you asked me?
I said, did you kiss her?
No, you said, did you make out with her? You're like, did you make out with her? And you know what I said back? I don't know. I couldn't remember.
So, and that was something that happened for Chasen a lot.
There's so many stories that
he has such a bad memory, like
so
such a bad memory. So things came up as like memories came back to him. So like
I'd see a truck or something like that. Oh crap. Like I can tell her this right now.
So pretty early on, like I think on one of our first dates, Chasen told me that like he wasn't a virgin, that like he'd had sex before. I told him like probably a little more guarded, like how far I'd gone, that like I think it took me a longer time to open up about my sexual past there's a lot more baggage with mine than I think with his. So I don't think there's a right way to do that. I do think it's important to let that person know, but also to know that like that's a past relationship and you should be able to talk about it. Like Chase and I had a conversation about my ex-boyfriend today because my ex-boyfriend's little sister got married today. So I was like, hey, Jake's little sister got married today and we talked about it. So it's like eventually it shouldn't be weird to talk that like we were both in past relationships.
But I think, you know, what I would say to that, Taylor, is make sure that person isn't the first person to know your dating history. Like, I hope you tell a couple other homies, you know what I mean? Like I had told my friends, I told my roommates, I told my guys group, I had told my Bible study way before I told Kelly, right? So I would say you should share as soon as possible, but the person you're interested in shouldn't be the first person you share with, right? I feel like you need a couple practice rounds, and like, you're not married yet. You don't have to be the most exclusive with that person, right? When you're married, you can be the most exclusive, but when you're dating, dude, like you should share with your small group, you should share with your friends, you should share your dating history with them before you share it with the person you're interested in. Yeah, and that'll give you some practice rounds on how to share that story. So.
Yeah, and I think with like on the receiving end of that, when someone's telling you about their dating history, is like
don't brag about it.
No, well, that, but also like approach it with like grace. Is like when someone's telling you about something, like it's not personal. Like most of those things probably happened when they didn't know you, and so I think it could have been really hard to hear about like all the girls Jason kissed and been like, oh, and I'm gonna pursue a relationship with this guy. But I think
and you might have an STD, falsely diagnosed.
But I think we tried to approach that of like, we both went in pretty openly saying, hey, I have a past, but like that's not this. And so I think giving each other like grace that they've dated other people, they've kissed someone else, like, so that's okay. That is pretty normal. And you know, very few people now marry the first person that they kiss or date. So yeah.
Okay. Should the guy or gal initiate?
Ooh.
You know, I think there's a spectrum of beliefs on this. I'll be honest. I think some dating advice, to be straight with you, is sexist. Like it's patriarchal. I think it's like old English BS that we don't need anymore. Saying all that, like I believe that there's a bunch of like false made up structures that guys need to do this and girls need to do this based on like 1950s chivalry, not based on 1800s chivalry, based on 1950s. Saying all of that, from the girls I've talked to, this is just my opinion. The girls I've talked to, they really like it when the guy initiates. So what? It's a made up cultural standard. So what? It might be something stupid. In America right now, the guy should initiate. I don't know. So I don't care whoever does it, but like I think the guy should.
But if you're a girl, like personally, initiating anything is like my nightmare. Like I'm not an initiator. Like I don't initiate with friends. I don't initiate like even in ministry. Like I just struggle with initiation. Like last year, Chasen made me take cookies with Nicole around the doors and like give them to people, and that was like a nightmare. That was so terrifying because I'm like, I don't initiate. I'm not an opener. Like I come in and someone introduces me to you and then we're good to go. But like cold openings is terrible for me. So that was just like in our relationship, even now, like Chasen still does a lot of the initiating because like if you've met Chasen, you know that he is an initiator. Like it just flows out of him naturally to get things going, to start things, to come up with plans and ideas and get the ball rolling. So he initiates, he plans our date nights and things like that. I think if you're a girl who likes that and like likes initiating, like starting things, like thinking of things, like do it, like take the initiative. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Another good thing to have a conversation about. I think Chase and I waited too long to have that conversation. And we were feeling weird about like, is this okay? Should I be doing more? But when we finally talked about it and realized like, oh, that's just, he likes doing that. I don't like doing that. Yeah. Great. So another,
it might be the other way around.
Unsexy conversation you could have.
Yeah, and I think initiation is more than just like asking somebody out the first time, right? Like it could be maybe you're in a relationship and like you want to talk about marriage at some point, right? Who should initiate then? You know, so it's not just the first ask. So saying that, like where I'm at right now with this culture, it's more acceptable for guys to do that and it's more expected. I think if we were a little bit more post modern or whatever, or I would say it could go either way, but like right now, like I think guys can do
Yeah.
it. And I think guys are more expected to do it in
Yeah.
general. So, okay. Is there, I don't know, is there a right? Wait, let's see. Oh, what should you know about yourself before you enter into a relationship? What do you think you should know?
What should you know?
Yeah. I think you should know yourself.
You should know yourself. I think you should know. Like, I don't think you need to be in a perfect place, but I think you should know where you're at. So I think like saying, oh, wait till your mental health is perfect, your emotional health, your relationship with Jesus is perfect. Like, I don't think that's fair, but you should know where you're at. You should know your struggles.
So maybe if you know your mental health is in a really poor place, maybe you should go see a counselor for a couple months before you date somebody.
Or if like, you know where your mental health is at and you feel like you're not going to put it on that person, but you need to make effort to like work on your mental health while getting to know that person. I just think like knowing where you're at with Jesus, with school, with your plans as far as you've made them out or not made them out, to be like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I think it's just good to know that and to ask yourself like where you're at.
And then like maybe another thing is like, are your values actually in the right place? Like there's a lot of people in this room who are highly dedicated hard workers. A relationship will cost you something. It will cost you time. It might cost you your GPA. It might cost you your grad school. It might cost you your future. You really want to put that on the table? Like think about that, right? You are not a heartless person from wanting to go to grad school so you don't date anybody. Like that doesn't make you heartless. That just means you know what you want, right? Like I wanted to get married more than I wanted to go to grad school.
But there are other things that Chasen wanted that we decided he could do. Like he wanted to take a 8-week intensive Greek class where he was in class for 8 hours a day from Monday through Friday. And that was hard and I didn't love it, but like that was something that we could do. So it was like there's things that
yeah. So I think like I'd say my biggest thing about knowing yourself is don't BS yourself. Like don't lie to yourself, right? You want to go to grad school, you can't date right now. You want a house when you're 24, well you have to spend money on a wedding. Like just don't BS yourself. That's what I would say. Know what you want is a good way to knowing yourself and knowing what you really want. How do you know if it is worth dating someone? Did we already ask that?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. How do you balance uncertainty of life and commitment of a relationship? I think we can kind of talk
over that, but I think a quick response to this is like uncertainty of life doesn't change when you're married. So that should never be like something that holds you back from getting a relationship if you like know where you're at. Because I mean, there's still a lot about Chasen and I's life that's uncertain. We don't know a lot about about ourselves, what we want to do. Like Chasen might want to go to grad school. We both might want to go to seminary someday. Yeah. Like who knows? We might want to stay on South University. We might want to be promoted. We might not. One of us might at some point leave staff. So I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty that still exists for us, but that doesn't stop us from being married.
Yeah, you'll never be fully certain.
Yeah.
And any relationship worth having is a risk. So
yeah.
Cool. How do you not let what has happened in previous relationships cause jealousy, especially after you let it sink in? I think you can't. I think it will cause jealousy. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah. Because if that person truly cares about you, right, that person's going to mess up and they're caring about you,
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. I think it fades.
Yeah,
like
the jealousy fades.
Like,
it fades with grace.
Yeah.
And I think it tightens up with contempt.
Yeah. So I think the more you can like actively talk through what has happened, the more like grace can be given and met.
The more you try to understand why that person did that at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, because now I think Chasen and I are at a point where we can talk pretty freely about like past relationships and past mistakes. And we never talk about it as like, this was a big thing. Chasen did go through a phase where he would talk about stories about girls
and I would brag about
And
it.
he would think like in a
While Kelly
brag,
was in the room. It
braggy
was
way.
so douchey. It
And
was so bad.
That was really bad. But for us now, a lot of our like relationship stories are much more like learning from experience or reflection. So they're not said with like a positive light of like, oh my gosh, when so and so did this with me, or when I did this with a girl. It's not bragging, so it's easier to like move forward from it. But so I'd say if the person you're dating is like comparing or like talking about their past relationships in like a sense of like, oh, I did this, or every
Domination,
time,
body count.
anything like that. Yeah. Talking to their friends right in front of you about the time that they like convinced a girl to make out with them in a hammock, kind of a thing.
Oh my gosh. I am so sorry. It's a funny story.
It's not a funny story.
You didn't tell the funny detail. That's why it's not funny right now. Anyway.
But that's probably not a good idea. So I think like processing and knowing the longer you're with that person, the smaller that like past relationship is gonna feel like. Because at this point, Chase and I have now been together longer than we've been with anyone else. So it's a lot easier to like not be hung up on that. So it takes time. And jealousy is not always a bad thing. So
yeah. It means that person likes you
and cares. So sometimes, sometimes I get jealous of how much time Jason spends with Thomas and Cam, like it's still a fact.
I ate chicken with some guys today, not with Kelly.
But
Not with Thomas or Cam.
Okay.
But he brought me chicken, so it's okay.
Yeah, so I think, just to recap, like jealousy will set in because that person cares about you and they care enough to be jealous about you, and if it's met with grace and understanding, the jealousy will fade and turn into compassion and love. But if it's met with contempt, it will tighten up and you'll sit in shame, and that's not good. So
yeah.
Okay, a question from the crowd at all? Any questions from the crowd? We have one more question on here, so you can submit more questions, but I do want to end in about 10 minutes. So 10 minutes worth of questions. If not, it's okay. Okay, Kelly, is there a right or wrong time to end a relationship?
I think it depends.
Cool. Depends on what?
Depends
on where you're at, depends on where they're at.
Yeah, it depends on where you're at, depends on where they're at. I mean, there's just a lot of circumstances I think that go into people even considering a relationship. So, for us, like we shared in our story, when we met and had our initial interest in each other, it just wasn't the right time. It would have been a bad idea just to start a relationship at that point. So that would have been a wrong time. But that doesn't mean we were wrong for each other. And I think that's something like we struggle with is like we feel like things always need to be like getting more intense and intensifying. And if we can't stay in the same place for too long, again, we struggle with gray, I think, as people. So for us, like we had to make the conscious decision that it's like it's the wrong time right now, but that doesn't mean we can't still get to know each other, that we can't like be intentional. And we can't keep pursuing each other in like platonic ways. So I think like
sometimes it's the wrong time with the right person.
Yeah. And that might have those 6 months that we went on dates, we might have discovered like wrong time and wrong person, like this is not worth it, this is not going to be beneficial. But so I think, I don't know that there's a cut and dry answer for like right time. And it's a good thing to ask other people too, be like, that's something Chasen did when we first met is he asked his best friend to like pray against infatuation, that he like
6 months
that we wouldn't be just like infatuated with each other, that like we would actually be able to discern if we like really wanted to pursue each other. And
pray,
so
like every night we were like direct roommates.
Yeah. We weren't at that point.
Okay.
But
no, we weren't there. You're right.
But just prayed for each other. Yeah, because he was starting to like a girl too. So that they would both like be intentional and that they would talk to each other about like if it was a good time and where they were at. So yeah.
All right, that's all the Slido questions. Any other questions from the crowd or the Zoomers? Maria and Sarah, you got anything?
No, we're just here to listen.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Lolo, you got anything?
You nailed it.
This tight. Anybody in the real live person audience?
How would you define the differentiation between like love and lust and infatuation?
Mm.
Oh, I have the biggest lust problem. Is that what you're saying?
You suffer with this the most. You can
I can talk through it. I don't think love is a feeling. I think it's like kind of a feeling, like it's you build into it, but I think love is like, especially when you're once you're married to someone, like love is definitely like a choice. Like, yeah, I still like Chasen a lot and I think he's cute and I wake up and I'm like, oh, that's so cute. But most days we have to choose into loving each other. We have to choose into serving each other. We have to choose into like treating each other with respect and treating each other the way that like Jesus wants us to treat each other. So love is much more of like a decision and an act, I feel like. And lust and infatuation. I think infatuation turns into lust for a person, and like lust can also happen just all around. So I don't know, how would you define like lust?
Yeah, I think what I would say is like love is an active choice to enjoy a person for who they are, and lust is an active feeling or emotion to enjoy someone or something for what they can give you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like nobody like loves, heroin. Yeah, I bet I can run
They
this
lust
example.
for heroin.
But they like lust it, right? Like nobody's like, man, I love this vial of chemicals in and of itself. And I would just like hold this vial of chemicals in my hand all day, right? It's like, no, they use it so they can get, high and, and then there's a lot of people where it's like, man, this person is a real bitch or a real dick this hour of the day. But when they buy me something, I get all these special feelings and I want to keep having those feelings, right? And so I feel like love is enjoying that person in and of themselves. And lust is, I only enjoy this person for what they give me at these times.
Yeah.
I feel like that might be a good.
I think infatuation probably will happen naturally when you're like attracted to someone, like that initial like interest, you think that they are cute and that you like, they're funny, they're charismatic. I mean, I noticed very early on about Chasen, he could like work a room and he was really charismatic and like talking to people. And I was like attracted to that. So that's like infatuation was pretty natural.
You like me for who I was, not just what I did for you when we spent time together.
Totally. I mean, because infatuation kind of started to happen before we really knew each other like that well. So I think when we prayed away from infatuation, I think it wasn't that like infatuation wouldn't happen. It was that like we'd move past that. Like we'd continue to progress beyond just being like, oh, he's so cute and he's so funny and he makes me laugh, that like we would get to like the depth that can bring about like truly choosing to love someone.
Yeah. Do you only like that person when they're with you, or do you like that person when they're with all these
Others?
others too, right? It's like, man, he loves me, but he's a dick to his mom, right? It's like, I don't know, it's kind of, well,
Yeah.
I'm not the best with my mom either, but I'm pretty good. Okay, 6 out of 10.
You're nice, Mom.
I'm just gonna blow through these questions real quick. Is it possible to wait too long in a relationship? Wait for marriage? Maybe not though. I mean, Dietrich Bonhoeffer didn't get married, but then he got killed by Nazis. So it's like,
wait
that's
too
cool.
long in a relationship.
Like,
I think like I don't know. I think that's really dependent on the person, the couple, like how long you should date, how long you should like be in a relationship before getting married. There comes a point where I'm like, why not?
Sure.
If you know
So where you at?
if you know that you are wanting that, like I think thinking about your reason, like for us, like the why not was like I couldn't move to Logan and he couldn't move to Ogden. That was the why not. That's what kept us waiting. So I think like,
but like Gabe and Dorothy were gonna get married and they each had one more year of college.
yeah. So
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
They had one more year, and whether or not they got pregnant, they were gonna have.
Or like
Or
like our good friends, she was totally fine moving to Logan for a year and they still lived there. So they got married before his last year of school. So like it was totally fine.
So,
there was no reason for them not to. So Yeah, so I think the
D-
better
don't-
question is
don't
not
forget-
like
yeah.
how long should we date, but it's like why not? Why aren't we? What are the
Yeah.
reasons to not take the next step? Like
Yeah.
what? And some of those reasons are really good, and you should like honor those and keep waiting. And but there will come a point where like, yeah, there's no reason to not be married, so get married.
Yeah. What was it like healing from your past relationships? Hard.
Honestly, like I would say there's still healing happening.
Oh, that's true. It's not done yet.
Yeah, it's not
Oh.
done yet. I mean, we're in a really good place with each other, but there's still things
But
that
we've had some intimate times with Jesus where Kelly's like, oh my gosh, I just realized like, I mean, can I share?
Yeah.
Like she just like realized that she was assaulted by this person in college and like she didn't even know
yeah,
until like I was intentional this one night and like it was huge.
yeah,
And it was like, oh my gosh, because like once we were married, that doesn't mean you're like done, but it
yeah.
was crazy.
Yeah, or for me, like some things that have come. I mean, I shared a little bit about like a lot of my time in relationships, late high school, early college was when I was like not with Jesus. So I partied a lot. I was getting drunk a lot, and so there's still some times where like some blanks are being filled in for me, and some moments of like realizing, oh my gosh, I wasn't a virgin when we got married, and like these things that like come up that are really like hard to work through, but it doesn't change. I mean, actually, like that brings us closer. The more we can learn about each other, the more we can heal. And so I think like it's a really good process, and it's really nice to like have the safety and the partnership of marriage while like processing through really hard things. So yeah.
This final one, then we'll go into final advice. How do you go about pursuing your relationship with Christ while in a relationship? Should this be done individually, separately, both? I'll give my hot thoughts. If you're not having a daily quiet time by yourself, your spiritual time should not be with that person that week, right? Like if you didn't have any time with Jesus yourself, like you absolutely shouldn't do anything spiritual with that person that week. That's just the biggest load of bullshit ever, right? Like that's so, I need this person to pursue Jesus on this Saturday morning. No, dude, come on. Like, so I would say, yeah, you can do it together. If you have been doing it individually, if you have not been doing it individually, you shouldn't be doing it together. That's my quick advice, right?
Yeah.
Like if the only time you read your Bible is when I initiate us reading the Bible together, that's horrible,
Yeah.
right? That's so dumb.
Yeah. And I think like learning, this is a big thing that we've learned in marriage, is Chase and I experience God really, really differently, and we interact with God really differently.
Liturgy,
So,
baby. Liturgy.
No, not through liturgy. So that's like
That's right.
the difference. So if we only did our quiet time together, one of us would be not experiencing God like the way that we do.
Yeah.
So like I think I do more like creative, artistic things. I will paint. I'll like go on walks and listen to music. That would drive Chasen insane. Chasen reads the Book of Common Prayer. That would drive me insane. Like if I did that every day. So I think like even when you're dating, like yes, Chasen is my closest spiritual like partner and like companion, but we don't always talk to God the same way. We totally do like things together. We study the Bible, we read, we pray together. But I have my own relationship with Jesus that is like really rich, and I hear from God, and like we each have different prayer temperaments. And so I think work on developing those when you're dating, because that's going to come up when you're married.
Yeah.
So
well, let's move into final pieces of advice. You have top 3 pieces of advice for singleness, dating. Talked a lot about relationship, but what you got? 3 pieces of advice. Go for it.
oh gosh, okay, that's really on the spot.
Okay.
I think over communicate, or it might feel like you're over communicating, but never stop communicating. I think have the seemingly mundane, the seemingly like unsexy conversations. Chasen and I were really lucky. We were both comm majors when we started dating. So we literally went through like conflict classes where we'd have to like analyze conflict. And so we talked as like through assignments with each other all the time. So I just think like talk about things, talk about how you handle conflict, talk about your family, talk about your dreams, just keep communicating even if it feels mundane. You give one.
I think my piece of advice is, dude, go on dates before you start dating.
Mhm.
Like for real, go on 10 to 15 dates before you commit to each other emotionally and
To
relationally.
the same person. You're saying.
With the same person,
Okay.
seriously. I think that's the biggest thing. Like we went on 10 dates and I found some stuff out about Kelly and Kelly found some stuff out about me. So we knew what we were getting into and we committed to each other relationally,
Yeah.
right? Like, and yeah, you can be intentional friends for 6 months. That's super cool too. For us, it was going on 10 dates. I wouldn't call that a friendship. I'd say that was going on 10 dates,
Mhm.
you know? So go on 10 to 20 dates, be intentional friends for a year, dude, before you commit to somebody emotionally. Like don't sign up for that and get yourself stressed out and double back, man. Like go on dates.
Yeah.
Like go on dates before you date,
Yeah.
before you're dating. What would you, second piece of advice? You don't have to have 3, it's an arbitrary number.
That's okay. I think talking through boundaries, I think that can be such a like taboo thing, but I think being not loose with your boundaries, but loose with how much you change your boundaries. And if something's not working, talk about it. If you're not feeling good or seen or loved, like talk about it, because that, I mean, we still have boundaries in marriage that we have to like talk through and figure out what makes us feel the most loved and seen by each other. So I think, set those, talk about them, change them.
Yeah. And I would say always err on being intentionally inclusive in public settings, always err on being way more inclusive in public settings, but then be intentionally exclusive. Plan when you are going to go on a date. Okay, well, final piece of advice for single people. Most of these people are single right now. We hope that they stay that way. No. What's your piece of advice for, some of them feel called to singleness, some of them feel called to a relationship at some point. What would you say?
I think just being intentionally single while you're single. So not just like waiting around for the relationship, or not just like,
and not always having like binoculars on, like, ooh, that cute guy's in my
who-
Bible study.
yeah, let
Right.
yourself make friends, let yourself build community, like don't download and delete Tinder every time that you're kind of sad. Like
That's what I did. That was dumb.
I'm sure we all did. I'm sure we've all done that. Like, and
Oh yeah, I get 20 matches. What up? Right.
yeah, like
emotionally fulfilled.
seeking validation from how many like people can swipe on you. But so I think like, and being really intentional about community, I think the thing that came from my season of intentional singleness was like the first time that I had like lifelong friendships really were cemented.
Get some spiritual friendships.
Yeah, get some spiritual friendships,
Yeah.
because that was the biggest thing for me, where like a friend that I was a childhood friend, but like we became really like intentional in that time. And then like 3 more friends that I just like met during that season. And like they're people that I will be friends with for life, because I wasn't so fixated on finding a guy or being with a guy. Like I made time to like make those people important, and that carried over into my dating relationship. But also if like we wouldn't have started dating, I wouldn't have been like depressed, because I had awesome community. I had really good friends that are going to be in my life for my whole life, and would have loved me single too, would have taken me in, and some of those friends are still single. So make some good spiritual friendships.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think what I would say for single people, anybody, you can only give what you have received from Jesus. And if you're not making opportunities to receive from Jesus, you ain't giving shit to anybody. You can only give what you've received from Jesus. So while you're single, dude, master your quiet times and master your Sabbath. Get a 24/7